Alright, fight fans and wrestling fanatics, you've seen them throw chairs, deliver bone-shattering finishers, and command massive crowds. They're larger than life, masters of the squared circle, kings and queens of sports entertainment. But what happens when these WWE superstars step out of the scripted world and into the raw, unforgiving reality of mixed martial arts? Today, we're diving deep into the truth, the often brutal, sometimes embarrassing, and almost always challenging reality of WWE stars who traded the spandex for fight gloves and attempted to make a name for themselves in the world of MMA. And let me tell you, for most of them, it did not go well. Stick around, because we're about to break down the biggest crossover attempts, uncover why their transition often failed, and reveal which wrestling titans actually managed to find some success and who just got schooled. You won't want to miss this. Let's start with a name that immediately comes to mind for many, Brock Lesnar. Now, Lesnar is a unique case and we'll get to him. But first, let's talk about those who didn't have his athletic pedigree or wrestling background to lean on when they crossed over. CM Punk. Think about CM Punk, a legitimate star in WWE, known for his charisma and best in the world persona. He famously left WWE to pursue an MMA career with the UFC. The hype was enormous, CM Punk the fighter. But the reality? His debut against Mickey Gall was less than stellar. Gall, an MMA novice himself, submitted Punk in just 2 minutes and 14 seconds of the first round. And his second fight, against Mike Jackson, even shorter. A dominant performance by Jackson, ending in a decision loss for Punk. Why did it fail? Punk himself has been very open about it. He started training late, struggled with the fundamental striking and grappling, and frankly, the pressure was immense. He was 30 plus years old when he seriously started training, which is ancient in MMA terms for someone with zero prior experience. It highlighted a critical point. Wrestling skills, while athletic, don't automatically translate to striking and submission defense. Bobby Lashley. Then there's Bobby Lashley. Now, Lashley had a more legitimate combat sports background before WWE with a collegiate wrestling career. After his initial WWE run, he actually had a pretty solid stint in MMA, particularly with promotions like Strikeforce and Bellator. He went 15-2 in his pro MMA career. So, why is he on this list? Because when he returned to WWE, his MMA career became this massive talking point, almost a credential for his tough guy persona. But here's the truth. While Lashley was successful in MMA, his journey wasn't a seamless transition from WWE. He pursued MMA seriously between his WWE stints, and even then, his opponents were often other wrestlers or less experienced MMA fighters. When he eventually came back to WWE, his MMA career was used more as a narrative device than a true testament to his fighting prowess against elite MMA talent. It begs the question, can pure wrestling athleticism overcome the technical demands of MMA? For most, the answer is a resounding no. Jack Swagger. Let's talk about Jack Swagger, or as he's known now, Jake Hager, another collegiate wrestling standout who transitioned to WWE. After leaving WWE, Hager decided to try his hand at professional MMA, signing with Bellator. His debut was against J.W. Kaiser. Hager won via first-round submission. Okay, a win, but let's be honest. Kaiser was making his pro debut and had a 0-1 record. Not exactly the toughest test. His subsequent fights have been, well, they've happened. He's faced largely journeyman fighters, and while he hasn't lost again, his performances haven't exactly set the MMA world on fire. He's shown glimpses of his wrestling strength, but the striking and submission defense are clearly areas he continues to develop. It feels more like a passion project than a serious pursuit of an MMA title. It's a common theme. The raw power and grappling from wrestling are valuable, but they're only one piece of the MMA puzzle. You need striking, you need submission defense, you need cardio tailored for 5-minute rounds, and you need the mental fortitude to deal with damage and adversity in a way that scripted wrestling just doesn't prepare you for. Batista. Batista had no prior amateur or professional combat sports background. His athletic achievements were primarily in bodybuilding. He was a major star in WWE, known for his imposing physique, power, and intense persona. This gave him name recognition and a built-in audience. Batista left WWE in 2010. Having achieved significant success, he expressed interest in MMA. This is where the paths diverged significantly. Batista pursued MMA training, but it was widely perceived as less intense and less dedicated than Lesnar's. He trained at various gyms, including Grudge Training Center in Colorado, but it didn't seem to be a full-time, all-consuming focus in the same way Lesnar's was. He was also older when he started serious training, which presents a significant disadvantage for learning new, complex physical skills. Batista debuted in 2012 at CES MMA 11 against Vince Lucero. He won via TKO in the third round. It's important to note Lucero's record at the time was 19-22-1. He was a journeyman fighter, not a top prospect. His second fight was at XFC 19 in 2013 against Brendan Riley. He won via TKO in the first round. Riley had a losing record. Batista's style was very raw and relied heavily on his size and power. His striking was basic and often wild. He threw heavy punches but lacked technical refinement and defense. He had some wrestling experience from high school, but it wasn't at a competitive level. He showed some ability to muscle opponents around but lacked sophisticated ground game or submission offense-defense. Without a strong combat sports base, Batista struggled to acquire the complex skills needed for MMA. Starting serious MMA training in his early 40s is a huge hurdle for learning and adapting. While he did train, it didn't appear to be the all-encompassing, life-consuming dedication that Lesnar exhibited. It seemed more like an attempt to capitalize on his WWE fame. His two opponents were not top-tier talent, making his wins less impressive and not truly testing his abilities against elite MMA fighters. His striking was rudimentary and his grappling was largely based on brute strength rather than technique. He was easily exposed by even moderately skilled MMA fighters. After his brief MMA foray, he returned to WWE, signaling that MMA wasn't his primary long-term focus. Brock Lesnar. Even before MMA, he was a physical anomaly. A NCAA division. One wrestling champion, a brief flirtation with the NFL. This wasn't just a big guy who looked the part. He possessed a rare, God-given athletic ability and a terrifying wrestling foundation. He absolutely dominated WWE. He was presented as an unstoppable force. So, when the news broke that Brock Lesnar was leaving WWE to pursue a career in professional MMA, the wrestling world was stunned. The MMA world, largely dismissive. He's just a showman, they said. Wrestling doesn't prepare you for real fighting. He's too old to start now. The skepticism was palpable. How could a guy whose fights were predetermined possibly hang in the highest echelon of legitimate combat sports? But Brock Lesnar had something most WWE stars didn't. A genuine, high-level combat sports background before the wrestling. He wasn't just a performer. He was a warrior who knew how to grapple at an elite level. Lesnar didn't just show up. He dedicated himself. He moved to Minnesota, immersed himself in training camps, and sought out legitimate coaches. He understood this wasn't a publicity stunt, it was a chance to test himself against the best fighters on the planet. His debut in K1 Heroes in 2007 against Min-Soo Kim was a success, a quick TKO, but it was his signing with the UFC, the pinnacle of MMA, that truly raised eyebrows. The betting odds were stacked against him. Many saw him as a spectacle, a cash grab for the UFC. Lesnar's wrestling was proving to be a near insurmountable obstacle for many strikers. He dismantled Heath Herring. But the real test, the moment that silenced almost every critic, came at UFC 100. His opponent, Randy Couture, a legend, a former champion. Couture had the experience, the striking, the fight IQ. But he didn't have Brock Lesnar's raw, untamed power and wrestling pedigree. In a stunning display, Lesnar weathered early storms and landed a massive uppercut, followed by ground and pound, to knock out Couture and become the UFC heavyweight champion. He wasn't just a WWE star dabbling in MMA, he wasn't a spectacle. Brock Lesnar, the former wrestling champion, was now the undisputed king of the UFC heavyweight division. He proved that legitimate combat sports roots, combined with immense physical gifts and dedication, could indeed conquer the Octagon. Lesnar's reign as champion wasn't long, ultimately falling to Cain Velasquez. Injuries and health issues, the same ones that plagued him earlier, would eventually lead him away from MMA, but his impact is undeniable. He remains the benchmark, the ultimate success story of a WWE superstar transitioning to MMA. He shattered expectations, proved the doubters wrong, and showed the world that the Beast was indeed a true fighting machine. His journey from the wrestling ring to the Octagon is a legendary tale of power, grit, and undeniable talent. So, what's the real truth? For most WWE stars, MMA is a bridge too far. The skills, the training, the mindset, they are fundamentally different disciplines. WWE is about performance, storytelling, and controlled physicality. MMA is about genuine combat, survival, and an unforgiving exchange of skills. While some bring prior combat sports experience or exceptional athleticism like Lashley and Lesnar, for many others, the dream of becoming a two-sport superstar crumbles under the weight of technical deficiencies and the sheer brutality of real fighting. So there you have it. The journey from the WWE spotlight to the MMA Octagon is a treacherous one. We've seen stars like CM Punk and Jake Hager struggle to find their footing, proving that charisma and scripted combat don't prepare you for the real deal. While figures like Bobby Lashley found success through dedicated, separate MMA careers, and Brock Lesnar remains the unparalleled example of a wrestling powerhouse conquering MMA, the vast majority of WWE crossover attempts have, unfortunately, fallen flat. But what do you think? Who was the biggest surprise for you when they tried MMA? Did anyone truly impress you, or was it all just a Hollywood-esque stunt? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. I want to hear your opinions. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the brutal reality of WWE stars in MMA, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to Fightpedia for more fight breakdowns, MMA truths, and wrestling deep dives. We've got plenty more explosive content coming your way. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video. We've got some huge topics coming up that you absolutely won't want to miss. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay safe and stay informed.